Under the shimmering stars where Dr. Lazaro is standing at the veranda, as he witnessed country darkness, the light in the distant highway at the edge of the town. The phonograph in the sala played Chopin like a vast sorrow-controlled maid familiar. He had been wont to think. His mind was in nothingness that was lay untouched by the conscious thought. In the scattered light from the sala, his angular face had a dusty, wasted quality. Only his eyes contained life. He seemed emotionally detached and indifferent. Suddenly, a man was calling from a service station outside the town, the station after the agricultural high school. The man is Pedro Esteban, the brother of the doctor's tenant in Ambalan. The man's week-old child has a high fever, a bluish skin, and its mouth would not open to suckle. Even if they wanted to take the baby to Poblacion, they couldn't, because its body turned rigid when touched.
Please, doctor, please help us. Help our child.
Esteban was hoping for the doctor would be so kind to help them.
I'll be there.
Dr. Lazaro then said yes to the man named Pedro Esteban. When Dr. Lazaro went somewhere to get his stuff, he then saw his wife look up from her needles and twine under the shaded lamp of the bedroom.
Shouldn't have let the driver go home so early. They had to wait till now to call. The child's probably dead.
Ben can drive for you.
Hardly see that boy around the house. It seems like he is on his vacation both from home and school.
He is downstairs.
Dr. Lazaro put on a button-down shirt.
I thought he's gone out again. Oh, who's that girl he's been seeing? It is not just warm, it is hot. He should have stayed in Baguio. There's the sea suffering because Adam ate the apple. They must have answered to everything.
He paused at the door as though for the echo of his words. Mrs. Lazaro had resumed her knitting in the circle of yellow light, her head bowed. She seemed absorbed in some contemplative prayer. Dr. Lazaro hurried down the curving stairs, under the votive lamps of the Sacred Heart. Ben lay sprawled on the sofa.
Ben, come along. We're going somewhere.
Ben followed him through the kitchen.
I'll drive. Pa? Somebody's waiting at the gas station near San Miguel. You know that place?
Yeah, sure. The engine sputtered briefly and stopped. Then, Dr. Lazarus said,
Battery's weak. Try it without lights.
and he smelled the gasoline overflow as the old Pontiac finally lurched around the house and through the trestle gate, its front beam sweeping over the dry, dusty street. But he is all right, Dr. Lazaro thought as they swung smoothly into the main avenue of the town, past the church and the plaza, the kiosco bare for once in a season of fiestas, the lamppost shining on the quiet square. No one tried to speak. Dr. Lazaro could see his son's concentration on the road, and he noted to a tentative amusement the intense way the boy sat behind the wheel, his eagerness to be of help. They passed the drab farmhouses behind the marketplace, the Capitol building on its landscape hills, gears shifting easily as they went over the rail tracks that crossed the last asphalted section of the main street. Dr. Lazaro gazed at the wide darkness around them, the shapes of trees and bushes hurling toward them and sliding away. He saw the stars nearer now. They seemed moving with the car. He turned away from emptiness, and suddenly he said,
You seem to have a good practice, Ben. A lot of what, Papa? The way you drive. Very professional.
In the glow of the dashboard lights, the boy's face relaxed, smiled.
Well, that's because Tio Cesar allows me to use this car in Manila for special occasions. No reckless speeding now. Some fellows think it is smart. Give them a thrill, but don't be like that. No, I won't, Papa. I just like to drive and go to places. That's all.
Dr. Lazaro watched his son's face intent on the road. He could see resemblance of his own face before he left to study in another country. A young faith, God turning abstract, unknowable, and everywhere it seemed to him, those senseless accidents of pain. Time was moving toward them, was whirling around and rushing away, and it seemed Dr. Lazaro could almost hear its hollow receding roar. The agricultural school buildings came up in the headlights and glided back into blurred shapes behind the fence.
What was the book you were reading, Ben?
Biography. Statesman? Scientist, maybe? It's about a guy who became a monk.
That's your summer reading? You're getting to be a regular saint like your mother.
It is an interesting book.
I can imagine. I suppose you'll go on to medicine after your AB.
I don't know yet, Pa.
You don't have to be a country doctor like me, Ben. You could build up a good practice in the city. Specialize in cancer, maybe, or neurosurgery, and join a good hospital. I've been thinking about it. It's a vacation, a great one, being able to really help people. I mean, you've done well in math, haven't you?
Well enough, I guess.
Engineering is a fine course too. There will be lots of rooms for engineers, far too many lawyers and salesmen. Now, if your brother...
He closed his eyes, erasing the slashed wrist, parts of the future dead in a boarding house room. The landlady whimpering.
He was such a nice boy, Doctor.
I have all the summer to think about it, Papa.
There's no hurry, Ben.
The station appeared as the coasted down the incline of a low hill, its fluorescent lights the only brightness on the plain before them, on the road that led farther into deeper darkness. Suddenly, a short barefoot man in a patchwork shirt shuffled forward to meet them.
I am stubborn, Doctor. We'll have to go through those fields. Doctor, then cross the river. It's not very far. Lead the way.
Crossed the road to a cleft in the embankment that bordered the fields. Dr. Lazaro was sitting now in the dry heat, following the swinging ball of the flashlight's beam. With the boy close behind him, Dr. Lazaro followed Esteban down a clay slope to the slap and ripple of the water in the darkness. The flashlight showed a banquette drawn up at the river's edge. Esteban waded waist deep into the water, holding the boat steady as Dr. Lazaro and Ben stepped on board. It took less than a minute to close the river.
You're here, Doctor.
Unsteady of the steep ladder, Dr. Lazaro entered the cave of Esteban's hut. The single room contained the odors he often encountered, but he had remained too alien to stirring and impersonal disgust. The Surrey decay, the smells of the unaired sick. An old woman greeted him, lisping incoherently. A woman, the grandmother, sat couched in a corner. Beneath a frame of the mother of perpetual help, a boy about 10 slept on mat. Esteban's wife, pale and thin, lay on the floor with a sick child beside her, motionless, its tiny blue-tinged face drawn away. Dr. Lazaro made a cursory check, skin dry, turning cold, breathing shallow, heartbeat fast and irregular, and in that moment, only the child existed before him, only the child and his own mind probing now like a hard, gleaming instrument. How strange that it should still live. Dr. Lazaro removed the blankets that bundled the child and injected whole ampule to check the tonic spasms, the needle piercing neatly into the spare flesh. He broke another ampule with deft, precise movements and emptied the syringe while infant lay stiff as wood beneath his hands. He wiped off the sweat running into his eyes and holding the rigid body with one hand. Ben at the door, the old man, the woman in the corner, and Esteban's wife in the trembling shadows.
Doctor?
Ben was kneeling beside the child, and he watched with a tired, detached surprise. The boy poured a trickle water from a coconut shell on the infant's brow.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Doctor, Tell us. I need everything. It is too late. There is nothing more I can do, Esteban.
Soon the child will be out of it. You ought to be grateful. Esteban's wife began to cry. A weak, smothered gasping. The old woman was comforting her.
It is the will of God, my daughter.
In the yard, Esteban carefully folded bills into the doctor's hand. The limp, tattered feel of the money was a part of a futile journey.
I know this is not enough, Doctor. As you can see, we are very poor. I shall bring you fruit and chicken someday. You better go back now, Esteban. We can find a way back to the road. The trail is just over there, isn't it? Let's go, Ben.
They took the path across the field. Around them, the moonlight had transformed the landscape, revealing a gentle, more familiar dimension, a luminous haze upon the trees.
You baptized the child, didn't you, Ben? Yes, Pa. Lay baptism, isn't that the name for it? Yes, I asked the father. The baby hadn't been baptized. They were waiting for it to get well.
The station had closed, with only the canopy light and globe neon sign left burning. A steady wind was blowing now across the fields, the moonlit plains. He saw Ben yawn.
I'll do the driving.
His eyes were not yet used to be, and he drove, leaning forwards, his hand tight on the wheel. Dr. Lazaro remembered Esteban and the child dying before morning. In the cramped, lamplit room, he started to think for his other son, the one he had lost.
If other people carried on like you, Ben, the priest would be run out of business. Now, you'll have an angel praying for you in heaven. What if you hadn't baptized the baby and it died? What would happen to them? It won't see God. Not. Isn't that unfair? It was like riddle. It was trivial but diverting just because. Maybe God is another remedy. I don't know, but the church says. The church teaches, the church says.
A bus roared around the hill toward them, its lights blinding them, and he pulled aside of the road, braking involuntarily as a billow of dust swept over the car. He had not closed the window on his side, and flung dust poured in the thick, brittle powder almost choking him, making him cough, his eyes smarting. They reached the sleeping town, the desolate streets, the plaza empty in the moonlight, and the hundred shapes of houses, the old houses that Dr. Lazaro had always known. He turned the last corner, then steered the car down the graveled driveway to the garage while Ben closed the gate. Dr. Lazaro sat there a moment in the stillness, resting his eyes, conscious of the measured beating of his heart. Before he finally went around the tower of the water tank to the front yard where Ben stood waiting.
Sorry for keeping you up this late. It's alright, Pa. Some night, huh, Ben? What you did back at the barrio? Your mother will love to hear about it. Reverend Father Ben Lazaro. Father Lazaro, what must I do to gain eternal life?
As he slid the door open on the vault of darkness, the familiar depths of the house, it came to Dr. Lazaro faintly in the late night that for certain things, like love, there was only so much time.